Hello, I want to welcome you back to the Leaders in Customer Loyalty podcast. This is the Brand Stories edition. It's a Thursday, and it's great having you with us every Thursday, so thank you. Today's conversation is going to explore how customer loyalty in the airline industry continues to evolve as co-brand credit cards, travel rewards, and customer expectations become increasingly competitive. Founded more than 30 years ago, WestJet has grown from a low-cost carrier into one of Canada's leading airlines. Throughout that evolution, the brand has continued to differentiate itself through a strong culture and a commitment to strong frontline customer experience. As the loyalty landscape becomes more crowded, particularly in the co-brand credit card space, WestJet has focused on balancing simplicity, value, and meaningful engagement for today's travelers. Today, we're going to hear from Byron Kelly about the evolution of the customer loyalty program, the growing importance of co-brand partnerships, and how WestJet continues to create experiences that strengthen customer loyalty. Byron, thank you very much for taking the time to join us. Welcome to the Leaders in Customer Loyalty podcast. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. First off, for those who may not be familiar, can you give us a brief introduction to WestJet, what you guys do, how you do it, how do you guys start?
For sure, yeah. So we're Canada's second largest airline. We fly about 25 million passengers annually. We're Calgary based, got about 200 aircraft. We would most often be likened to, say, Alaska. Alaska Airlines is a US equivalent, or a JetBlue or a Southwest. That's probably the way to think of us. Fly a lot domestically in Canada, US, sun Caribbean destinations, and have a smaller footprint in Europe and Asia. Um, and we've been around for 30 years. So we essentially, WestJet came around when Canadian Airlines merged with Air Canada. And there was a bit of a
Okay.
void in the market. And so WestJet sort of came in as a scrappier, lower cost type carrier, helped bring prices down, make travel more affordable for Canadians. That's kind of the history in a nutshell.
Excellent. So when you look at the airline, what's led to the success? Is it kind of the ability to kind of plug in and be that second option, offer more flexibility, more customer experiences? What's led to the great success?
Yeah, I think for sure the company, originally it would have described itself as a low cost airline. It wouldn't anymore. We would describe ourselves as a leisure focused airline today, but it really did concentrate on a super low cost profile and maintaining that advantage so it could offer better pricing. And so that helped it get a foothold in the market. I think sort of just get people's attention. And then what set it apart over time was, as it so often does, was the frontline staff. And I guess the comparison point in Canada is Air Canada, obviously, much more established traditional sort of legacy network carrier. And WestJet filled a space as a sort of more, I'd say, fun, lighthearted, a more relaxed kind of airline. And that's
Yeah.
not a knock on Air Canada. That's just a WestJet carving out its own space. And so people kind of grew to like the friendliness of WestJet. It's the sort of place where the pre-flight, the safety video would be done in a fun way instead of just a taking care of business kind of way, if you like. So it was that helped WestJet sort of grow beyond its initial roots, I'd say.
When you look at the airline industry, it's definitely going through some transformation. All those low-cost carriers are kind of changing. They're upstreaming, right? They're adding first class. They're adding more seat room. They're adding, redoing their credit card program to have more benefit. I mean, aside from maybe Ryanair in Europe, I mean, most everyone who was that low-cost, Southwest. Spirit, they're gone now. They've all kind of upticked and moved upstream. What's driving that upstream push?
Yeah, it's the I think at some point you need to do more than just compete on price. And to compete on price, you need that cost base to be able to offer the best price. But then when you need to compete on more than that, and particularly an airline will see better yields, higher revenue from the non-low cost carrier or the non-ultra basic kind of fare purchaser, that you almost can't help but push into that space a bit as well and say, how can I find a way to play there? Now, I'd say in the case of WestJet, it's been 10 or 15 years that we've been not a low cost carrier and more
Right.
of a leisure focused
Okay.
carrier. I've had business class cabins for a decade now and been traveling internationally for a decade now. But yeah, you're right, and it's one that we only see even more and more coming out of COVID. The call it the premiumization of travel. You see
Okay.
some of the U.S. airlines like Delta, and I think United and American is sort of following suit. They're all chasing the premium traveler because that's where you're making your money these days. It Up here in Canada, Lynx was an ultra low cost carrier which exited the market a couple of years ago. Flair was the other ultra low cost carrier which sort of put its hand up 6 months ago and said, "We're not a low cost carrier anymore. We're going to become a normal carrier," if I can say that. Sort of to your point of it's a hard place to compete, and airlines moving away from that.
Okay. When you look at your role, can you tell us a little bit about your role, what you do at WestJet from a day-to-day basis, and also, how did you get into the role in customer loyalty, customer experience?
Yeah, for sure. So I actually started at Air Canada and Aeroplan, so that's why I'm never disparaging about the competition. I was the finance guy for marketing at Air Canada, and got more interested in the marketing and loyalty side of things and the finance side of things, and so I did that for a dozen years. I've been at WestJet now for 5 years, and most of my day to day is actually our co-brand credit card. That's the lion's share of what I'm focused on. Along with I'll call it our non-air travel partnership. So we have a car platform, a hotel platform, an e-store, sort of other levers for engaging our members in our program. But big focus on the co-brand credit card. You alluded to it yourself before, the sort of focus on that because of the value it can drive.
Absolutely. So when you look at your role, especially focused on that co-brand side, what are the biggest challenges you see in your role for improving, enhancing customer experience within the organization, and or maybe what are the biggest challenges you face?
Yeah, I think with on the co-brand side, the challenges there would be it just becoming a more and more competitive space. If we look at the sort of competition set, there would be 10 more credit cards in the premium travel credit card space in Canada now than what there were, say, 5 or 6 years ago pre-COVID. So it's more and more competitive all the time. That would for sure be the biggest challenge. I think when you have got folks into your program and you've got them engaged with your credit card, if you have a good product, you've got a pretty good chance of maintaining them and keeping those folks spending because you kind of get hooked on the points and being able to redeem and the free flights and all that sort of thing. It's the how do I get somebody who does not have my co-brand card and they may not even be a member of my program yet? How do I get them to take a look at that and get them to understand the value that I'm offering versus the competitors out there and sort of get them across and get them in?
Yeah, and then that's a question we like to ask too, pretty consistently is, when you look at getting consideration and then getting, choice, with lots of choice out there. So how do you get in to be in the consideration set of a travel program, right? And then once you get into that consideration set, how do you flip them? How do you get them to be that card of choice,
Yeah, so I'd say we're lucky in that we partner with Royal Bank of Canada, and
right?
that's the number one bank in Canada. So they've got a fabulous client network of their own, and it ends up being one of those, very symbiotic relationships. We got a bunch of members who aren't bank customers, and they got a bunch of customers who aren't necessarily yet WestJet flyers, and so having each other's, pools available to us. Um, yeah, how do we get them in? We change our mind on that about every 3 or 4 months when it's like,
Right.
what's our next hook or what's our next offer? I'll give you like the current and certainly what we're seeing in Canada is sort of total value messaging. Do it in a way that it's something that tangibly the member can say, got it. I'm going to get, don't tell me how many points and check bags and companion vouchers necessarily. Tell me what they're worth. So, and do it in a way that it doesn't look like you're making up numbers that are just trying to get as sort of high as you can. That's that's the sort of current trend that we're seeing here in Canada, I'd say. And it can depend a bit whether we're fishing in our own pond with our WestJet Reward members versus fishing, out in the public and where we're trying to stand out as well.
You talk about value. It's a big area of focus discussion within our community. It's especially in hospitality. But many programs right now are trying to change the program. Some would say maybe devaluing the program,
Yeah,
right? And it's kind of the old Jedi mind trick. Oh, we're not going to give you a point for every mile, so we're going to give you a half point, but we're going to give you a free cookie every third time you fly. Well, I really don't want that cookie, right? I want the
yeah.
program. So we realize there are some challenges economically that may push some of these, but it's you mentioned that transparency value, making it easy to understand. What we see for being in the industry is that some brands create a lot of complexity, right? We're gonna give you these two benefits, but man, to get a hotel it used to cost me 25, 30,000 points. I don't see anything under 50, 80 now. So what's going on, right? So
Yeah,
do you think that creates some dissonance with customers, right? Because they know the program may be changed or devalued, but it's not being presented to them in that way. And if so, how does the industry do that better?
yeah, I'd say specifically for WestJet, we probably advantage from the fact that we're still a relatively young program. So we're 15 years old. And we've actually just gone through our own sort of revamp last year as a program. But we come from a place where it's a pretty simple program. Before the changes we introduced, you earned WestJet points for flying on WestJet. You earned WestJet points if you had a co-brand card, and you could redeem your WestJet points toward the base fare of a flight. And that was it. That was all.
Right.
We had a WestJet dollar, which was super transparent and simple. One WestJet dollar equals one Canadian dollar. So every time you'd front up to redeem, you just knew, okay, I got 78 WestJet dollars. I'm going to get 78 bucks off the flight I'm booking today. And so part of our change was actually going from WestJet dollars to WestJet points. So arguably feeding into a bit that trend you're mentioning about, oh my goodness, we're making it more complex and all that sort of thing. And simplicity is one of the core principles we have in our program and that we try to stick to. We found we needed to go to points if we wanted to grow our program beyond that sort of, it was fairly unidimensional as just a flight program. The benefit we had being a younger program is that we didn't offer a lot of the other good things or the other utility that more mature programs did. So in introducing a change, like going from one WestJet dollar to 100 WestJet points, we're also able to introduce, you can now earn those points on ancillary purchases, or you can now
Yeah.
redeem those points on ancillary purchases or taxes and fees. So in our case, we were fortunate in that coming from a relatively, call it bare base, we could introduce more utility to the currency at the same time that we're making a change. And so on balance, that can be acceptable to a member. It's not just a devaluation or a taking something away. Um, the other thing I'd say there was we were really deliberate in our change in that one WestJet dollar equals 100 WestJet points, because that's easy math to do. Everybody can do that. It's not like a 1 to 90
Right.
or a 2 to 3 and when you redeem on a flight now, 100 WestJet points get you $1 off your flight. So sort of nothing has changed from that perspective. So just trying to make that easy for the member to understand and see that there's no Jedi mind tricks here or sort of shenanigans happening. That's the way we try to balance that one.
That makes perfect sense. So you talked about it a little bit. Customers are changing in many industries right now. They want simplicity, they want value, they want that reciprocity. How do you see customers changing in kind of the larger travel hospitality programs?
Yeah, I think like for sure they're looking for more value. I would say they're looking for better, just I'll say experiences, and I guess that can sort of go across from my booking experience on your website or in your app to my onboard experience with with your product to there is now a flight disruption and you need to handle this in some way for me, my missing bag or my reconnecting me. Given the technology available to us now, sort of across all of those things almost, there is an expectation that you as an airline or you as a loyalty program can deliver that a lot more seamlessly for a customer and in a way that takes the work or the effort off of them. We should be able to see things and be ahead of things. So it's it's purely, if you boil it down to the points, nuts and bolts of loyalty, value, but it's sort of that customer experience element as well, make things easy for me.
No, yeah, that's good. Great. When you look at customer loyalty, what does customer loyalty mean to you, to WestJet? How do you define it?
Yeah, for me, it's like it's the person who chooses to fly with WestJet, as opposed to you're the only airline in town, and so I begrudgingly have to fly you, if you
Right.
like. And the choose could be two levels, and I'll probably take either level at this point. It could be transaction by transaction. I got to book a flight today. I need to make a choice. Is it going to be WestJet, Air Canada, Porter? I got to book a flight next week. Same thing. I got to make that choice. So if they choose me, that's good. I'll take that. What we love even better, and although a customer or a guest is still making a choice, they're not actually doing that shopping anymore. I have had such good experience with WestJet when I have flown with them. I am now just automatically choosing WestJet next time I fly. So I'm not even shopping around to see what the other guys are offering. They're my team. They're who I'm flying with. So if it starts on that sort of transaction by transaction and you make a choice for us, great, we'll take it. If we can give you that sort of great experience every time you do fly with us to the point where you're now just like, okay, I'm in with WestJet. I don't even need to shop around. That's the loyalty we're really looking for.
And when you look at that deeper loyalty, those connections you talk about, listening to your customers, which you talked about as a big focus, prioritization of a program internally is very important. Many brands will speak to the fact that they may have it prioritized, but then, the kind of the actions may not be the same, right? They have someone very junior running the program. It doesn't have a seat at the table across, different facets of marketing. How is the customer loyalty, the loyalty program prioritized within WestJet?
Yeah, so I'm glad you're asking me this question this year as opposed to 2 years ago, because I can point to the fact that we did a loyalty revamp last year, which was one of the big three investments that WestJet made as an airline last year. So at the moment, it's good. Loyalty's got a good profile. The value's pretty well understood internally. We got a VP of loyalty who reports into the chief commercial officer. So, in the same way the VP of revenue management reports into the chief commercial officer, or the VP of sales reports into the chief commercial officer. So that's our seat at the executive table. I would say it is probably night and day between now and 5 or 6 years ago in terms of that that buy-in at the company level around loyalty. That just comes with education and understanding. And I mentioned before, we're a relatively young program, and so it just sort of comes along the maturity spectrum there. I think just sort of makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. Can you walk us through the program a little bit? The WestJet Rewards program, how kind of the benefits that are offered. I know you have different tiers, teal, silver, gold, platinum. Tell us a little bit about the program.
Yeah, for sure. It probably looks and smells a lot like other frequent flyer programs that are out there. So WestJet Points is the currency that we use. Anyone can join. It's free to join. And then at the most basic level, you can earn WestJet points for flying on WestJet, and you learn that on your flight, on your ancillaries, on your surcharges, sort of on everything there. You can earn points through our co-brand credit card, which is obviously a very popular way to do it, and how most people are earning their points. You can earn when you book cars or hotels through our car or hotel booking platforms. We've recently introduced some everyday partners who you can also earn points with now. So a good sort of variety of ways that you can earn points. And then flip side, redemption, Flights is obviously the big one, and you can redeem on ancillaries, surcharges, taxes, and fees. You can get a free flight on us, which is something we quite like. And then otherwise, redemption options. We've got an e-store for gift cards, merchandise, that type of thing, and the everyday partners who we've introduced. You can now also redeem at. And so I'll mention just briefly, we have a telecommunications partner, Telus. We've got
Yep.
a delivery service partner, Skip, who I think might be Grubhub in the US,
Yep.
be
Yep.
the brand that
Just
folks
read just read a press release about how you guys are partnering with them.
perfect. And then the last one's Canadian Tire, which is a retailer here. But that's great now. In between those moments of travel, our members can earn points at all of those partners, and they can use their points at all of those partners as well if they want to. So that's kind of the earn burn mechanism. And then in terms of the tiers that you mentioned, everyone's a teal member when they come into it. And then we do have a tier program, silver, gold, and platinum. And it's basically through your flying activity and or your co-brand activity that you can make your way into those tiers. So there's an element of that's unique about what we offer is that you can get to tier and even our very highest tier just through co-brand spend alone, which
Yep.
isn't something that every program will do. You can also do it through a combination of flight and spend. We think it's pretty accessible. $4,000 in flight spend would get you into our silver tier. Or put it another way, if you spend 50,000 bucks on a credit card per year and did $2,000 in flight spend, that would get you into our silver tier as well. And then through the tiers, pretty standard benefits, priority airport services, check bags, lounge access, seat selection. And as you go up the tiers, you get more or better. From, for example, silver, you get 6 lounge vouchers, but at gold, you can unlimited lounge entry. So pretty sort of standard in that. I'd say we're pretty generous in terms of that tier program, and that would come from it's only been established for about 10 years at this point. And
Okay.
so Air Canada's was very well established when WestJet's came in. And so for WestJet to kind of compete and be interesting against the Air Canada offering, probably had to put a bit more value in the tiers and than what you might, than what you might see at Air Canada, for example.
Okay. You talked a little bit about kind of the new co-brand program, and you just mentioned too you can earn tier status by the spend on the card. So obviously very engaging in that regard. Would love to know a little bit more about those customers, kind of that, but more importantly, what are some of the benefits that are tied to the WestJet RBC World Elite Mastercard, and how has it elevated the customer loyalty program in general?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, benefit wise, free check bags, yeah,
Yeah.
is the big one, and that's the one that consistently we hear from members is the one they value the most. The second big benefit we have, which is unique to us, was actually I should say now because we were recently copied by Porter, and if imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, then I guess we'll take it. Is our companion voucher. So every year with your co-brand card, you get a companion voucher, which allows you to bring a +1 with you on a trip for $119. And so you could be buying a fare that's worth $800, but you get to bring your companion along for $119. So what do we see? Last year in 2025, on average, people who use the companion voucher save $585. So it's pretty telling value when you use it. So check bags, companion voucher, and then of course just your spend on the card is the other big one. If you get 1.5 points per dollar, we've got some accelerator categories beyond that, but sort of put it, hopefully what comes across is simply if you spent $30,000 a year on your credit card and it's our credit card, you would get at least 45,000 WestJet points, which is worth
Okay.
$450, which is 450 bucks off your next trip. So when you start to stack that stuff, I got $450 just from using my credit card the way I was going to anyway. I got a companion voucher so I can bring my wife or my husband or my kids along and I save $585. We checked our bags and it's on a round trip and that's another $180. Like you pretty quickly get to a point where you're getting thousands or more in dollars of savings per year just from getting the credit card and spending as you normally would. You don't have to do anything extra or special necessarily.
That makes sense. That's awesome. You spoken to it a little bit about kind of post-COVID, the changes you talked about in the organization last 2 years. You've made a significant change, focus, more prioritization of the program. How critical the customer loyalty program has it been to WestJet and the airline industry, to entice people to start traveling again following COVID? I know COVID's been a while back, but
Yeah,
was it a driver, the loyalty program? Obviously, many airlines used it for funding, right? United and
yeah.
others in the States here to get government-backed loans. And it was more valuable than the airline itself. But, when you look at that, how has that program really driven re-engagement with the brand?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. The monetization thing of programs is good. The other thing that we sort of saw during COVID were there were months where airlines were getting more money in cash receipts from their co-brand credit card spend than they were in ticket sales. Like when nobody was buying tickets. So even just that that sort of base, cash in, cash out. So yeah, COVID wasn't a blessing for anyone, but in some ways for programs, it's shone a bit of a spotlight on the value, and I think to help accelerate acceptance of the value of the programs in some ways. Coming out of COVID, certainly what we saw at WestJet was that it was WestJet Rewards members who were the first ones to come back and travel. Um, Probably a couple of reasons behind that. One, they're just by being a WestJet Reward member, you are more likely. There's an element of sort of self-selection there. You're a traveler, um, but you've been building up points all the way through COVID on your co-brand spend, for example. So you've actually got enough points to start traveling for free, and you're more likely to come back because of that. Airlines, including WestJet, had programs where your tier status was maintained right throughout COVID, so you could restart where you left off, which was a tool that the loyalty program gives the airline essentially to be able to encourage folks to come back and get traveling. So for sure, it was the rewards members who were first ones out of the gate on the WestJet side, and sort of continue to lead the charge for sure.
When you look at the younger generation traveler, how is WestJet engaging with them? Obviously, many younger people want to travel more. They also want to be top tier status in the program right away, given they traveled with you once, right? So their expectations can be out of line sometimes,
Yeah.
based on the research that we have done. How are you engaging with younger travelers, and are there some challenges that it may present based on kind of the traditional models?
Yeah, I love that you bring up that example of like they expect that they should get tier status, on the first or second flight they get. We were looking at some member satisfaction stuff recently, and this ability for co-brand to get you to tier is generally seen as a really great improvement. But there's this pocket of members who are saying that because you have to spend, like 50,000, 100,000, like a decent amount on your card, they feel disenfranchised by that because that feels like an amount they can't get to. And when you dig into it, it's the younger customers who might not have the salaries yet that sort of support that level of credit card spend and all the rest. Somehow we've managed to disenfranchise them from what should be
Yeah.
a good thing. But it's a little bit their expectations, and maybe arguably we didn't build that product to satisfy their expectations. But it does point to some of the challenges with a younger demographic, digitally native, informed and skeptical, value driven, looking for more immediacy. I mean, the good thing is, I'd say, like they will switch from brand to brand, I think, is our experience. But if you can build that trust with them and if you can get them, then they will become your advocates as well because they're more likely to be doing reviews and posting and influencing or whatever it is. So although it can be fraught with danger, if you can build that trust, then you've got yourself some good brand advocates. It's yeah, I'd probably leave it at that.
Excellent. Okay, perfect. So AI, it's something that everyone's talking about. Some are
Yeah,
scared, some are happy, some do not know what to think about it. But from a customer loyalty perspective, we've done a couple studies there as well, and it's still kind of a late entry, but brands are really starting to warm to it. Some of the trepidations they have around data and governance have kind of subsided. How are you looking at AI?
Yeah, I feel like it's going to feel like I'm trying to dodge the question. I'm probably not the best person to ask, but here's what comes to mind for me. For sure, talk about like say personalization, which has been a pretty hot topic for the last couple of years, and does AI get us to hyper personalization? Um, I wouldn't say we're great at personalization yet. We've got room to improve there. So do we get to hyper personalization as a quick next step? We've got some work to do, but I think of AI in that kind of capacity. I think of how it can help from an analytics perspective as well. So propensity modeling or sort of predictive capabilities, next best action type activities. I think it's probably fair to say most folks have had models that may do that in the
Yeah.
past. They could be better now, but I think what AI can help you do is get to executing off of some of those more quickly than what you otherwise may have done. I think one of the areas where AI could be interesting is, and it's sort of almost whether we control it as the airline or whether this is just going to happen out there sort of through agents anyway, that travel companion type notion, trip planning, that sort of thing. I'd love to see a world where it's now WestJet, like, hey, Mark, you're one trip away from gold status. Want me to send you some ideas for your next trip to get there?
Yeah.
We don't do that, but could we do that? Whereas, I think all of us as consumers are probably using AI a little bit to, hey, I got 3 days to, go to St. John's, Newfoundland or whatever. What should I do? What are the ideas? there there's there's absolutely that. The other thing I'd say it is changing for us is a little bit the way we market and the way we need to think about things. So, for example, web pages, which in the past maybe needed to be optimized, like for search engine optimization, now they've got to be written or constructed, or you've got to have the right kind of tools, FAQs, calculators, comparisons, whatever it is, that it helps you be discoverable and show up in answer engine optimization and geo. And it's just sort of pivots a little bit the way you need to think about some of your marketing so that you're showing up where the consumers are, because they might be somewhere where they weren't a few years ago.
Excellent. AI is there. You talk about hyper personalization. It's funny because a couple years back, that was, I want to say 23, 24. That was all the buzz, right? Hyper personalization. It kind of faded like blockchain and crypto well, crypto now, but
Yeah.
yeah, blockchain back in the day, right? Kind of.
Yep.
So, well, what's the next big thing for customer loyalty? Is it AI? Is it just personalization? Is it more empathetic engagement? What's the next big thing for customer loyalty?
Yeah, I think, and you hear it being talked about more and more is like that notion of emotional loyalty or capital L loyalty.
Yeah.
Like the AI, I like the example of blockchain. So I remember sitting at some of the industry conferences 15 years ago, and I kind of went, I don't get this. I don't see what this is going to do. But the people smarter than me seem to think that maybe it was. And ultimately, sort of nothing came from it. So AI will be there, but to the extent we can sort of harness that and come up with real value add use cases, it it will play a role. But yeah, I think it's that capital E or capital L, or emotional loyalty, um, which is probably being partly driven by almost that younger demographic I talked about before, and
Yeah.
them becoming brand ambassadors and sort of catering to them a little bit more, and they're going to be the travelers of tomorrow. I think it's probably a bit of an easy answer because everyone talks about emotional loyalty these days, but that's it's probably where I'm tending on that one.
Okay, perfect. So, when you step back, you look at the program, obviously on the partnership side for WestJet, what are two or three things you're most proud of when you look at your customer loyalty program?
Yeah, I think the change that we've been able to make in the last 12 months, and the utility we've been able to bring to the program, we've introduced three big national Canadian brands as partners. We've refreshed our co-brand credit card products so that members now earn more. So that companion voucher I talked about has got flexible options for people who don't travel with a companion, for example, and a whole bunch of things. So I think just the amount of, I'll say, positive change that we've been able to introduce in the last 12 months, and I think bring our members along for the ride with us. Do it in a way that we've been able to explain it to them that it is, I'll say hopefully, but from what we see, I think largely has made sense to them or been understandable to them, and that we've been able to to bring them through that process with us. I'd say we're not done yet. There's still more utility to bring. There's still more partners to bring into the program. But that'd be what we're most proud of in the last year or so.
Byron, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. It's great hearing more about WestJet and how they continue to evolve their customer loyalty approach, how you are looking at the customer in very unique ways, trying to bring value to them at every turn. It was a great pleasure speaking with you, hearing your passion for the customer, the brand, and the program.
Beauty. It was great to be here, Mark. Appreciate the questions.
And thank you to everyone for tuning in today. It was great having you on the Leaders in Customer Loyalty podcast, the Brand Stories edition. Be sure to check back every Thursday for a new edition with the brands that are shaping the future of customer loyalty. Make sure to subscribe and follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, and our other social media channels. The comment section below will have links to them as well. Looking forward to seeing you next Thursday. Thanks.